In the reptile community, people are making bigger and better reptile enclosures that are not only functional for the human, but also incredibly enriching for the animal. That is why I will be starting a new series called The Reptile Engineer. In this new series I am making, we are going to be diving deeper into the world of 3D printing, not only 3D printing our own designs and finding 3D prints that you can print at home to make your life as a reptile keeper and the animals' lives even better. Welcome to Reptile Engineering. And in this first video, we're going to be diving into the world of mealworm farming. This is version 2 of the Mealworm Farm by Ego Lab. Mealworms are one of the most annoying things for me as a personal keeper to keep alive or to keep from pupating into beetles. So that means spending a lot more time and money on feeders like mealworms. And instead of building my own with just containers like this, I found this 3D print. In this 3D model, there are two different types of bins. A fully enclosed bin where all of your mealworms will sit, and a mesh bottom with holes that can keep all of your beetles in. You're going to take your mesh bottom bin and put it directly over top the fully enclosed bin. The way this works is all of your beetles will be placed on this mesh screen. Once the mealworms breed and lay their eggs, the eggs will hatch and eventually fall through the mesh into this bottom layer. Now, in both layers, you're going to want food for not only the beetles, but the growing mealworms. And that is where these ingenious things come into play. These are simple 3D print mesh enclosures to hold all of the food. So when the food has eventually either dried up or they have eaten it all, usually there's a little bit of remnants in it. The beetles will accidentally bury it into the substrate, leading to unhealthy conditions for the beetles, and then those unhealthy conditions end up in your food for your animals. But with these, all of the extra food that is not eaten can easily be picked up, thrown away, and replaced. Now, a fun fact about mealworm beetles is, well, they're cannibalistic. When your beetles turn into pupas and there are other beetles around, usually those pupa are easy targets for your beetles and will be cannibalized. That's where these come in. Now, this model is called the Arena, but I like to call it the Cannibalizer Be Gone. As your mealworms turn into pupas, you can place them onto the center ring, but because of this lip, no beetle can get up to the pupa and cannibalize each other. And when the pupas turn into beetles, they will most likely just walk straight off this thing and into the normal area with the other beetles. Now, I printed 2 of them so I can have 2 in the enclosure because the actual ring is a little small for most likely the amount of pupa I will be producing for at least the first little bit. With the description Ego Lab gave us, they recommend about 20 to 30 beetles in one mesh enclosure should be plenty. The last thing that I printed were labels. Did I need all of these labels? No. But did I want to see my cool new 3D printer multicolor? Yes. These labels are for every month of the year, and we also have an extra one called larvae. So I would assume this is anything that either pupas or mealworms that you want to eventually grow up and put back into your supply of beetles. As I've said, these are entirely modular. Now, depending on how many animals you have eating mealworms, you could have mealworms for every single month of the year and have multiple beetle colonies that would be resupplying. So January is up, all right, then we move to the February batch. We start feeding off the February mealworms. Once February ends, we put them back to keep growing. You can have an infinitely modular amount of these, but for this video, I only have 1 container and 1 mesh because 3D printing is awesome, but it uses up my filament, and I want to bring more reptile engineering things to you, so I gotta save my filament. Now, how do we actually set this up? The wood shavings you normally get from the PetSmart containers usually are a little bit harder to find, so a lot of people use oats. Now, I got the cheapest oats I could find at Walmart, but these are perfectly fine for mealworms because they can also ingest them if they end up eating them, so it would not harm your animals or anything like that. You're going to want to fill every container you have, which in my case is the mesh and the full box, with up to about a ½ inch of oats for the substrate of the mealworms and the beetles. Now that we have our oats in, we are going to place these guys in both containers. Now you're going to want to take your arenas, or as I like to call them, cannibalizer defenders, in the top mesh side for the pupa to eventually pupate into beetles. That is all you need besides the food and the beetles to set up this entire enclosure. Now obviously, if it's a fully modular thing and you can stack things on top of each other, you're going to need a lid, so there is a lid that you can print with it, which fits, has a nice little handhold, and you can put it directly over top your mealworms to create a fully secure enclosure, but it still has air holes to let out air, and so mold does not grow. Now all we have to do is add our mealworm beetles into it, and these are already fully grown up, so most likely you do not have fully grown up beetles. You will have most likely larvae that you can get from any normal pet store. So you will want to place them in the bottom tray until they start to pupate into beetles, and then you can start placing your pupa and your beetles inside the top mesh enclosure. With that being said, I'm going to sort out a bunch of beetles and we'll be right back. Now we are going to add our beetles that I have painstakingly picked out one by one and put into this cup so we can add them in. I also have 2 pupae, so we will be able to test how well the cannibalizer be gone actually work. So that'll be interesting. We are going to place the pupae on the cannibalizer be gone, and just because we have 2, we're going to place 1 on the other one. Those will pupate and hopefully fall off to not be cannibalized, so be great. With that being said, we're going to take all of our beetles and place them inside the enclosure. Nice thing is, these guys can actually eat the oats, and actually I see it right now. As soon as I put them in, they are going to town on these oats. It also helps with the food side because these oats are really cheap compared to, let's say, carrots and other stuff like that. And also a lot of that stuff can go bad a lot quicker. Oats can, so meaning I can keep a lot more stock in the reptile room instead of having to go to the store every week. Well, they can climb apparently. Oh, that's not great. Will this stop him? Well, I would highly suggest keeping the lid on at all times because I just saw that they can climb. Because it is a 3D printed surface, there's a lot more surface area for these animals to grab on, unlike something like this. So that is the one downside to this. But in theory, they won't try to climb out because they are being fed and making babies. Well, that is the mealworm farm. Now, a lot of these things will take time to show results, like this mealworm farm, so there will be videos coming up in the future over showing everything about how these guys are doing and how other prints that I'm soon to be printing and bringing to you guys and showing you how 3D printing is really, really cool in reptile keeping. So with that being said, I'd like to give a huge shout out to the Patreon members that have joined Patreon. This helps me do literally what I'm doing right now, becoming the reptile engineer I've always wanted to be. With that being said, that is going to do it for this video all on reptiles. Hope you guys enjoyed. With that being said, if you want to see more stuff like this and more engineering that I do myself instead of finding other 3D prints, subscribe.